Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the SHAIR podcast. And today we have Rabbi Simon Jacobsen joining us on the show. And today he gives us a spiritual antidote for the coronavirus. It's one of my favorite episodes. I think you're going to absolutely love it, and you're going to absolutely get a ton of value out of it. And where you will also get a ton of value is by subscribing to the SHAIR podcast YouTube channel, where every week I will be uploading amazing episodes just like this one every week. So click subscribe to this YouTube channel. And in the notes below, you will also have links to the SHAIR podcast website, to the Omar Pinto website, where you can join the SRC, the SHAIR Recovery Community, or find out about one-on-one coaching with me by setting up a free consultation with me today. And now let's dive into the episode. Hello, Rabbi Jacobson. How are you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. A real pleasure to be here. Real pleasure.
Good. I'm excited to have you on the show. We have a lot to discuss. But before we dive in, I just want to quickly introduce you. So, folks, today we have Rabbi Simon Jacobsen joining us on the show. And Rabbi Simon is the author of the best-selling book, Toward a Meaningful Life, that has sold over 400,000 copies today. Rabbi Jacobsen is one of the greatest scholars and sought-after speakers in the Jewish world today. He has lectured to diverse audiences on 6 continents and in 40 states on psycho-spiritual issues and applying Jewish thought to contemporary life. Rabbi Jacobsen has coached many people struggling with addiction and going through these challenging times, both the addicted and the dependent. His message and approach is not focused on the lowliness of man, but man's great divine potential, looking up, not down. And most recently, Rabbi Jacobsen has reached out to the world and urged us all to take a deeper look towards our inner resources as a means to cope with the uncertainty surrounding the coronavirus. Let's get to know our soul a little better. Am I paraphrasing correctly there, Rabbi Jacobsen?
Excellent. I couldn't say it better myself.
All right.
Omar.
I practiced.
Well done.
All right, good. So let's just dive right in because, right before I pressed record, really, that's where we were at. It was like people that are not looking in, people that have been looking out for so long, their favorite restaurants, tickets to the Mets game, right? Whatever that is, whatever outside external things that bring them pleasure and soothe them is no longer there. And if they do not have an inner relationship with themselves, if they have not gotten to know their soul better, this is where the challenge comes in. So please expand on that.
Absolutely. Look, just 1 month ago, 2 months ago, if you asked anybody, how's your life? Pretty good. My investments are doing well. Wall Street's going up, the markets. I've got my summer plans in place. I have my season tickets for the Mets or the Yankees or the Boston Red Sox or whoever it may be. The playoffs are coming, basketball playoffs and this. I've got my whole schedule. I commute to work. I have everything figured out. You ask them today, it's all gone. The calendar has been erased. You're not traveling anywhere. All your plans have been aborted. You're not leaving your home. All these entertainment and so on. And thank God it was a blessing. But no one ever thought that we're vulnerable or in any way can be upended. And here comes a microbe that's invisible to the naked eye and just suddenly has impacted and upended, disrupted, destabilized every human being on this earth, every sector of society. So I, as a person who's always been into spiritual growth and spiritual healing, I look at it because I deal with people all the time. And if I spoke to someone, I just was speaking to a fellow 2 months ago, he says to me, Rabbi, come back to me after the summer. We'll talk about our inner lives, my soul. Right now I've got a new girlfriend and I got a bunch of things to do. I have a whole maneuver. Now he's calling me and saying to me, what you've always said is right. If you don't have an inner life, that outer life is very temporary and very unreliable. You can't call it secure. I'm actually going to be giving a class tomorrow What is true security? Where do you rely on for safety? We always thought securities is like these financial vehicles and investments.
Yes.
And but the truth is, everyone understands today without even discussion, materialism is temporary, impermanent, and you cannot rely on it. The fact that we did was a gift. The fact that we have prosperity and comforts and all the technologies, and we thought we were Superman. You know what? We're right now doing exactly what they did in the 14th century when there was a plague, an epidemic, quarantine, no medication, no money in the world. You could have 10 private jets and you can go nowhere. So I'm not saying that in a negative, just to me, yes, we all pray and bless everyone to be healthy and well, wherever you may be. But at the same time, this is, I think, an unprecedented opportunity to get to know yourself, to get, your soul. Because that is the only thing where you find true security and true safety, the self-nurturing. That's why I believe people who've gone through recovery, healing, in a way who have already given up control and had to lost control, have in some ways a certain advantage right now because they've been there. The carpet has been pulled out from under me. So this is, and it's a very, I really believe it's the defining event of our lives. And I really also believe that, this will pass, but if we are wise and we allow it to be a wake-up call, we can have a really brave new world. Not to paraphrase Aldous Huxley, but we can really have a new age of sensitivity, awareness, because what's beautiful that I see is people, you don't see dog eats dog, survival of the fittest. And, you have obviously always exploitive people and so on. But overall, a tremendous surge of kindness, of generosity on Zoom, groups, people offering each other some help. And that is a rise of human nobility that is beautiful to see. Even in Italy, in Israel, in America, you see people on porches. They can't celebrate a wedding, so they're all on the porches and they're, each one playing their instrument. I had a niece that got married in New York last week. We couldn't go to the wedding. There was no wedding. The grandparents couldn't come. So I went to the ceremony and stood from a distance because I had some of the symptoms. But it was, then the family rented a Rolls Royce with a music blaring in front of them, and they drove through the streets, and everyone came out on the porch, including my mother, grandmother of the bride, dancing. It was amazing to see what humans, the resilience and the ability for us to rise to the occasion. So we all hope that we go back to normal, but not the regular normal, a new normal of a higher state of awareness and consciousness, and to realize materialism is only a stepping stone to spiritual awareness and growth.
And that's it in a nutshell. But boy, do I really want to expand on that, because I really believe that. Also, the point about so many of us, especially addicts. I recently interviewed someone. We had this conversation. And the thing that comes to my mind is that this is just a belief that I adopted, which is the best case scenario for human beings is the worst case scenario for the planet. In other words, if this thing were to end next week, which is best case scenario for all of us, our humanness, that are all like, great, oh my God, my season tickets are back in play, and now I can go to Tahiti, and I can get back on my jet, right? And so all of a sudden, we have these built-in forgetters. And we quickly start to forget that this ever happened. And the thing about us as drug addicts is that there is no way for many of us, I would be venturing to say 99% of us, it is impossible for us to forget the years of struggle and suffering and fear and isolation that we went through, the degradation that we faced in our addiction, the loss of wives and husbands and family and jobs and money, and then continuing. And then finally one day you recognize, I can't do this one more minute more. And I feel as though right now is such a beautiful time to reflect and to look. First, I understand about looking inside, but if you look outside and you start looking at what is happening to the climate, if you start looking what's happening to the oceans, and Mother Nature is breathing again, and she is actually recovering from all the abuse that us humans who want to go right back to being human have done over the last few hundred. It's only been maybe a couple hundred years since we've really over abused the planet. So I wanted you to unpack that concept, because I think that's what you're referring to, right?
Of course. Yeah. I'll tell you, Omar. Omar is the right way to call your name?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I like that name. Look, as a spiritual seeker myself, one of the greatest questions and maybe paradoxes and ironies of existence is that you don't wake up until something's taken from you.
Mm-hmm.
When things are going well,
mm-hmm.
or you think they're going well,
mm-hmm.
you take it for granted. And for any truth seeker, let's just step back for a moment and not be subjective about it. Philosophically, it doesn't make any sense. If indeed your reality is just a matrix, and maybe a delusion for that matter, a program that you've bought into, cultural program, and just because you're comfortable doesn't make it real.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we need to lose it before we really appreciate? Like Leonard Cohen says, why do you need the cracks to let the light in? Why can't you see the light without the cracks? So there are two answers given, and I'm going to quote some mystical teachings.
Please.
Yeah, they're very powerful. Number one, and answering a question with a question. Okay. How is it possible when you understand the mystical, and I would even say today, quantum mechanic view of existence, that we're all one intricate whole? It's a mosaic. It's an illusion that the world is a fragmented, disjointed place. Everything is connected. We know today with string theory and other quantum ideas that subatomic particles sense each other billions of miles away faster than the speed of light. There is some underlying unity. Nobody really understands it, but it's there. It's not like, oh, the tree is here, the table is there, you're in Costa Rica, I'm in New York, this one's in Israel, this one's in Spain, that one's in Italy. There is an underlying integral unity, which would also mean that we are one with nature. Nature is one with us. We are one with each other. You and I are part of one larger organism, and all your listeners. We are all pieces. I like to always use the musical analogy. Your musical notes in one large composition, cosmic composition. So then how is it possible? This is maybe a childish question, but it's a profound question, that you and we can hurt each other. Human injustice. Is it possible? This is a Talmudic question, that the right hand of a body should hit the left hand? Would you go? I mean, that's called autoimmune diseases, when your body turns against each other. Who in the right mind would you ever hurt yourself? So the big question the mystics ask is, how is it possible? So their answer is, because there's some type of also concealment. It doesn't let us see this integral unity. And it doesn't let us see true reality. And the expression tip of the iceberg is not a cliche. It's exactly right. And I'll even use a word. I'll introduce a word to you and to your audience. It's a Hebrew word, but it's a word used by the mystics. It's called klipa. It means husk, a shell. Think of an eggshell. Think of a potato peel.
Mm-hmm.
Think of an orange peel. If you did not know there was a fruit inside that peel, you'd say, hey, very nice. It's orange. It's brown. And imagine living your life thinking all of existence is the peel. And then one day, somebody pierces a hole through the peel, and you see, hey, delicious orange juice. You open it up, wow, there's a fruit inside here. So they explain that all of existence, material existence, is like the peel. It's a husk. It's a shell. And you're dancing on the shell. You think your reality, everything happening on your eggshell, when in truth, real life is happening within. But it's a shell that conceals. Concealment is a key word here. So you don't see that reality. You don't see the unity. And therefore, you can delude yourself into thinking, I'm a self-reliant individual. I don't need anybody. I have no inner life. Some people would say, soul? No. I remember one guy telling me, I just spoke to him the other day. He says to me, I used to always talk to him about his soul. He said to me, I never seen a soul. I don't know what you're talking about. I only relate to things. He did like this. He said, the things I can count. He meant money. So I said, very interesting. In other words, your reality is based on your 5 senses. What you see, what you hear, what you taste, touch, and smell. Let me ask you something, I said to him. What happens if you close your eyes, your ears, your taste, touch, and smell? What would you be left with? He says, a good question. I'd probably be asleep. I said, the opposite is true. Your senses are so overstimulated, you don't even know that you have a life. Tell me something. How about love? Do you love anyone in your life? Is love containable in the parameters of our senses? I know you could hug somebody, you can touch someone you love, but love itself. And what about ideas? And what about feelings? There's so much truth. There's so much in life, the things that are most valuable, that the senses cannot contain. They don't relate to them. I said, you know what? You'll get to know your real self when your senses close down. He called me last week. He said to me, I'll never forget our conversation a few years ago. My senses are not being stimulated. I'm already sick of Netflix. I've done enough video games. And now I'm left alone at home, So when that shell has been pierced, and that's what's happened. The coronavirus, this pandemic, has essentially stripped us of the illusion, to use William Blake. When the doors of perception are cleansed, what do you see? You see the oneness. You see reality as it is. So the doors have been cleansed, in very uncomfortable. Because if you've been living your life in your routines and your habits and your schedules and your patterns, and suddenly someone says it's all gone, you say, what am I left with? Well, you know what you're left with? The real you. I always used to ask people and say, tell me, who are you? They always give you their business card. And I say, that's not who you are. That's what you do. And I remember one woman said to me, sadly, Rabbi Jacobson, what I do has become who I am. I said to her, well, who you are should dictate what you do. Not what you do should become who you are.
Wow.
So much of our lives is what we did, what we do. Our businesses, our homes, our entertainment, our friends, our social circles, whatever it is. And that has now been thrown into array. That has been rattled, if not worse. And it is, in that sense, a true wake-up call. Now, why it has to come through pain, we all pray it shouldn't. I would always pray that whenever I meet people who've suffered, why did they need suffering? Why did they need addiction? I can't answer. The only way I can answer that is because the comfort zone of our shell life, our surface, superficial life, conceals. And to break through a shell, you need something to crack it. And a crack is not always pleasant.
No.
I would take it a step further. The mystics also say that any paradigm shift, you need to go through a vacuum, a void. That's not comfortable. Creativity is the child of frustration. A mother giving birth to a beautiful child has to go through birth pangs. We all go through any excellence. You show me excellence and growth, you have to shed a layer of skin to assume a new layer. It doesn't work any other way. Because as long as it's an extension of the past, it's what they say. Insanity is believing, doing the same thing and expecting different results. Or as they say in recovery, nothing changes, so nothing changes. I always like this line. I don't know who coined it. I may have coined it for all I know. Sometimes you don't even remember. If you think what you thought, and you say what you said, and you do what you did, Omar, what are you going to be left with? It's a mathematical certainty.
You're always going to get what you got.
Exactly. You'll be left with, you'll have what you had.
Yeah.
But people want new things, but they don't want to change their thoughts, their speech, their actions.
You're correct.
They want newness. They want to press a button, Amazon Prime, deliver me a new life. Remember that the website was called, I think, Second Life?
No.
Like people paid thousands of dollars, not now, in the earlier times of the internet. Maybe it's still out there. People paid thousands of dollars to create a new identity online. You wanted to be, you were a man, you want to be a woman, you were a poor guy, you want to be a wealth, and they create a whole virtual reality based on your dreams and fantasies. And people would really be addicted to it because they can escape their real life and go to my second life. Now, you ever see someone you talk about addiction, you ever see someone addicted? Let's talk about subtle addiction to soap operas. I know people, they can't miss a soap opera. So today we have the recording it, you can replay it, etc. And a soap opera, you ever watch a soap opera? I mean,
yes,
it's fiction.
Yes.
But you're living vicariously. And I think that vicarious living, whether it's through sports heroes or Hollywood, celluloid heroes or others, that people are right now realizing, man, 1 second here, that reality is not very real. And so again, I wish it came without pain and without loss, without death, without aggravation. But especially in a podcast like this, listen, let's be honest. This is a cosmic wake-up call.
Yeah, and
on a collective level. And I really believe that's what I really love being here with you. I believe people who have gone through the fire can teach the rest of the world much today. Not arrogantly, the humility.
No.
I've already surrendered. I've lost it. It's like, I have nothing left because when you have nothing, you have nothing left to lose, as they say. So, but something, and I want to add one more thought that I'd like to add, because people think, okay, so I have to lose everything before I gain? It's not that simple. No, you're not losing. You're losing your illusion of control. You never were in control. You thought you were in control. Just because you had a job and you didn't feel that addiction or other things trapped you, doesn't mean you were in control. It means, like I see the sign up there, not all who wander who are lost. There's a tremendous concept, which is the structure of existence. I go back to the shell. The structure of existence is a very myopic, small part of the picture. The truth is, reality is beyond structure. So sometimes when you're living in a life and you convince yourself that you're in control of your life and your material life and everything's going well, the crack in that structure, which means it breaks down and you realize it's not working, you know what it leads you to? To a truth that really existence is beyond structure. And it's people who, it's almost like saying there's a place that's beyond dark and light, between good and evil, between pain and joy. And when you get to that place, you can then reconnect to a life of joy. But as long as you are addicted, I'll use the word addicted to your lifestyle and to your structure, you think that's it, you are on a collision course. At some point it's going to give because it doesn't have that power. And the truth is that people who've been hurt, who sort of cause lost structure, actually come to realize a reality that's beyond structure, which hopefully then they can rebuild their lives based on that. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. There's so much there. And really, as far as like when you say, I wish we didn't have to go through pain or, going through pain and suffering. But what I've come to understand, especially someone from addiction, is that the only way for us to recognize that we are in the matrix is when pain comes in. Because when we're comfortable, when everything's going right, we start to believe that this is all there is. And so the attachment to it becomes stronger and greater and stronger and greater. And like you say, we take it for granted. If I live in a $2 million house and I'm earning, $500,000, $1 million a year, whatever that is, I've reached a level of comfort in my life where I no longer have to struggle. There's no more worries in my life. And all of a sudden I start to believe that maybe I have done all this and I have now reached this place in my life where I've done enough. And so there's no need to grow. There's no need to evolve. There's no need, I have finally reached the top of the mountain, so to speak. And so when that happens, what happens? This physical realm, the matrix, becomes truth. It becomes reality. And what we do is we disconnect from what? We disconnect from spirit. We disconnect from unity. We become self-reliant. And so I think that pain is the, you have these auditory cues and visual cues. This is a physical cue. Pain is a physical cue that goes, no. What you think is truth is not really. This is a video game and you're winning so far, but that's all it is. There's still more. There's more to learn. There's more to evolve. There's more to do in your community, right? And so what I want, and so like I do understand. I totally get it, right? But what I want to talk about is a couple of items, okay? So number one is this idea of someone comes to you, especially now during this coronavirus. So I want to drill down into the coronavirus because I love it. The coronavirus has cracked the shell, okay? My little outside world, fantasy world has been broken. And now it's like, oh my God, I've gone through the Netflix and I can't drive my car and I can't fly my plane and I can't go to Tahiti. So now I'm just stuck with me. And you say, aha. So now you have to get to know your soul better. And they're like, well, Rabbi Jacobson, how do I do that? What does that journey look like?
So the interesting thing is that the soul functions very differently than the body. So it's not just like, okay, you know what? Now that I can't go outside, I'll go online and Google and find out what my soul is like. It's not just another piece of data and information. It's a completely different paradigm. So let me use an analogy. I use it in my book, Toward a Meaningful Life, that you mentioned. There's a verse in the book of Proverbs that says, the soul of a human being is the flame of God. It's a flame. The closest approximation that we can actually envision and visualize a soul is like a flame. A flame is the only physical object, Omar, that defies gravity. It's always seeking and looking upwards, not looking down. The wick grounds it, the flame. So I'll tell a short story. He was a great Hasidic master. His name was the Tzemach Tzedek. He was a little child. He was playing with other children on a ladder. They were climbing a ladder. You know, children playing. And all the other kids were afraid to climb to the top. He climbed to the top. His grandfather, who was a great mystic, a great teacher, a great sage, calls over his grandson and says, tell me, in Yiddish, he says, why were you the only child that was not afraid to climb to the top? So he said, Zayda, that's grandpa in Yiddish. He says, Grandpa, very simple. Because when the other children were climbing, they kept looking down. So they saw how high they were afraid to climb higher. They were afraid because their comfort zone is down below. It's getting too high. He says, when I was climbing, I kept looking up. So I saw how low I was. It motivated me to climb higher. So the soul looks at existence very different than the body. The body is always looking at what my appearance, reputation, my social class, how are others looking at me? And you're always looking at others. It's like when you go to a party and people have accomplished less than you, you say, hey, I've done enough. My ego feels very good. I feel more accomplished. But you go to and meet people who have accomplished more than you have. So you're looking up, you suddenly realize, 1 second, there's so much more to. So the body, and when I say body, I mean materialism, I mean our physical perception of reality on the shell level is very egocentric. It's very self-interest. It's all about me, me, me. How much I can take, how much I can hoard, how much I can own, so to speak. The soul works the exact opposite. It's looking up. It's always like absolving itself of its identity. I'm not looking to be more of me. I'm looking to be transcendent, to be less of me and more of what's up there. And then you come to discover that that's the real you. The real you is not your little egocentric, small little world that you think is reality. It's the fact that you give up what you think is you're in control of that really allows you to be truly in control, because there's no longer control. It's like the narrative controls you. You don't control your narrative. People think, I'm in control of my life. I know what I'm going to do today. Suddenly, God has proven you're not in control of anything. Everything you planned is gone. So that doesn't mean you're out of control. It means maybe it's time to look at life a little differently. What are you needed for? Not what you're coming to take. What are you ready to give? Not what you, because you are part of a bigger choreography. Surrender to that fact, and you know what happens? You become all powerful, because that can never be taken from you. Your plans can be upended very easily. But when you connect to something beyond you, and that's what the soul is. So getting to know your soul really is getting to know a whole different way of looking at yourself and at people and everything. And that's why you see anyone right now is managing, because they're feeling they're at service. Look at people who are just sitting at home. They're miserable. If they're just entertain me, do something for me, me. As soon as they call somebody, hey, maybe I can bring you some food. Maybe I can volunteer. Maybe you need a kind word. They feel enriched. Even selfish people, you know why? Because that's who we really are. We're truly givers. Look at parents. They don't have to be taught to give to their children unless they're unhealthy. A healthy parent, of course, love is natural to us. Giving is natural to us. The fact that we become narcissists and parasites and takers, that's not the natural human being. That's a superimposed, all part of that, let's call it back the shell perspective of your little world. You know, it's like a very insecure world. And the only way I have security is if I own things. If you have something and I take it from you, I feel more powerful. It's like, but the soul thinks very differently. You don't have to be wrong for me to be right. That's what the soul says. You know, when I give, I become stronger, not weaker, not less, because I'm fully confident that I will never. It's like people who have, let's say, $10 million. If I give away half, I'll only have 5 million. But if you give 5 million to someone you love, you have only 5 million, or you have something much greater in return. It's called love. So it's not about materialism. By definition, divides, separates. It's parameters, time and space. It's all about me. Two physical bodies can't sit in the same seat, but two souls can be one. And as we quarantine, I've been telling this to people, like you said earlier, correct. It's not socially distant. It's physically distant.
Yes.
And we can be soulfully more connected than ever.
And we are.
Absolutely.
We are.
But we need to be aware of it. That's the key. And a lot of people have not thought about that for a long time in their lives. So for them, it's a rude awakening. But you know what? They're waking up to the fact, and I thank God. Look, everything I'm doing now, I'm in war mode, to be very honest. I feel like it's a wartime. I mean, in a good way. You know, health-wise, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, people are challenged. So I'm been producing content. I'm doing programs online, short little videos, podcasts, Zooms, you name it. I did a panel with Ellie. And I mean, that's where I'm at, because I feel I feel like, I've been trained for this moment. It's not a time to retreat and be fearful. This is a time to really rise and show the human race what we're capable of. Loving and unity. Now, to be honest, I think a lot of people are coming to that, but those of us that are aware are responsible to really share that awareness.
Yes. No,
that's very empowering. It's very empowering.
That's exactly my point too. It's like what you just said there. It's our way of being of service is to have this conversation, which gives this point of view that this is not something that is happening to us. This is something that's happening for us. It's allowing us to have a paradigm shift globally across the planet. That for those of you listening right now, if this would have been 6 months ago, okay, having Rabbi Jacobson on the podcast would have been almost impossible. Busy. Got lots of things to do, going to the synagogues and going to the weddings and all this stuff. Now, all of a sudden, I get this opportunity to spend an hour, maybe more, depending on how we go, but at least an hour with Rabbi Jacobson, and we get to have a conversation that maybe I would have never had the opportunity to have, or an opportunity to give to my listeners, to share this point of view, to share about love, to share about transcendence, to share about universal consciousness, to share about unity, to share about an understanding that what we believe to be true may not be true. And so with that being said too, Rabbi, when I look at what's happening in the world, okay, and just based on what you're saying, and I'm listening to you, and I'm like, I totally agree. Is there something to be said to us because let me gather my thoughts here for a second. No, what I wanted to kind of touch base with the service piece. That's what I wanted to talk about, the service piece. What you just said. There are more Zoom meetings happening globally than at this time than ever in our entire history, ever. This ability to connect, this universal consciousness has never been more accessible and technologically feasible than now. And I think that we have an obligation to now do exactly what you're saying. If you want to go inner, one of those aspects is to be of service. Instead of sitting at home and whining about what you can't do and what you don't have and when will this be over, how can I make more content? How can I do more videos? How can I stimulate more people? How can I bring more people closer to God, closer to themselves, closer to their inner guidance system, to their soul? What can I do today to help people see that what they're attached to is meaningless and what they have access to they've forgotten about? That was my point.
I couldn't say it better myself. I think you put it excellent, very eloquent. 1,000,000%. I would say, I would add service, love, demonstrations of courage, of giving. This is it. This is it. Why does it take a pandemic to cause the human race to turn collectively that direction? I go back to the mysteries of God, of concealing God's presence. You know, Christopher Hitchens, the famous radical atheist who passed away a few years ago, he wrote a book called God Is Not Great. He was like one of these, they have these radical atheists. And they asked him an interesting question. What happens if you die? Well, after you die, you find out there is a God. You know what he answered? He had a good answer. His answer was, I'm going to ask him, why did you conceal yourself so well? Why did you conceal yourself so well? Because that's what happens in this material world. That people, can you hear me, by the way?
Oh yeah, no, we're good.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry.
I'm here. I'm all ears.
That this material world, you know, you mentioned addiction. I would love to ask you or other people who've gone through that challenge. Let's say you never had any addictions and those issues. What kind of life would you have had? You may be living on that, you know, like a pin on a, what do they call it? On an eggshell, and going through your emotions, because that's the reality. This physical reality of ours is so airtight, almost, creating the illusion of success. You can create your own narrative. That's completely not true. When really, behind the surface, beneath the surface, and behind the scenes is a whole bunch of forces at work. And I'm just always amazed by it. But now that's been stripped. So we have here an opportunity. I loathe to think that we go back and everybody says, oh, okay, the curtain has been closed. We're back to normal. All that was a bad nightmare. I really want to believe that there'll be a new human awakening, a new social consciousness, new spiritual consciousness, a new age, a new world, a world where materialism will still exist. But like I said, it's appeal for the fruit within. That's all. We're not trying to take people's jobs away or their health away or the material successes. Just realize all it is a shell. It's a tool chest. It's a means to a higher end. Beautiful expression Maimonides uses, that in the future, the business of the world will be not material success, but materialism as an end towards spiritual knowledge, towards inner knowledge, toward divine knowledge. Isaiah the prophet puts a world filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea, meaning spiritual knowledge. Like I said, transcendent knowledge, not knowledge just to make you feel smarter or more powerful or more in control. And I think this is the time. I think if someone really launched a global effort right now and said, as loud as the coronavirus is echoing across the globe in separating us, let us create a revolution of unity, of love never seen before on earth, using technology, getting all the heads of state to sign on to it, getting every important person that we are committed as a human race, just like the coronavirus does not discriminate and it virally spreads infection. Let's spread virally love and kindness in a global revolution, committed to that. Show our children what we really are. We're all in it together. You tell me, that could not change the universe. I mean, I know it may sound naive or idealistic, but I'm a dreamer, and I believe that's possible. I never knew how it would happen. I thought it would happen grassroots, slowly, But here, you have this, cataclysmic event. And cataclysms can create new awakenings, completely new realities, new spiritual realities. There's no question in my mind.
Well, and I certainly do not want to use the word, being naive to any at all. I want to use the word hopeful and idealistic, because that is the hope that ideally that's exactly what happens. And so I'd like to go further down the rabbit hole when it comes to concealment. Like you had the question, the question, I was like, ooh, I'm ready to hear it. You said, what's the great question? Why have you concealed yourself? And so if you were to theorize as to why God has concealed himself, what is your theory on that?
I'll tell you something. I don't even need a theory, because in the school of thought that I grew up, and let me just give you a little background. I grew up in the Chabad Hasidic world, which is a very deeply mystical, spiritual take on life. And this is discussed very bluntly. This is like the first thing you learn when you're a child. That God desired is the word, to have a home, a divine home, in the lowest of worlds, in the world that is completely devoid or conceals reality. And that's where he wants to have a home. Doesn't want to have a home among angels and among perfect human beings and the righteous and the saints. Like they say, you want to go to heaven for the climate, but hell for the company. God wants a home in hell. He doesn't want a home in heaven. In a world that is hostile, that can have injustices, addictions, distortions. That's where, now you could ask me why, the answer given by one of the great masters, his name was Rabbi Shneur Zalman. He says, on that dimension of the divine, there's no question why, because logic wasn't created yet. Logic is also part of the purpose. Interesting answer. That's how it is. So we don't ask why, we just ask what. And the what is that this reality, you have to explain. I found that to be so comforting. When I first discovered, and I'll tell you the word, Tzimtzum. It's a concept from Lurianic Kabbalah, Kabbalistic ideas. Isaac Luria was a great Kabbalist mystic in northern Israel in the 16th century. And he introduced, which is an idea that was always there, but he explained it. He calls it the secret of the Tzimtzum. That's what he calls it, the secret of concealment. How, when there was a divine consciousness that filled everything, it was seamless. There was no room for a duality. There was no room for another identity. But then the divine wanted a relationship. So the only way he did it was by concealing divine consciousness to allow for independent consciousness to be born, which after many steps of evolution turns into you and I, a world that's completely lost and can be lost. Now, it's not airtight. He does introduce a thin ray of light. That's how he puts it. It's not airtight, which allows us, like there's a little glimpse that when there's a crack in that reality, we can find our way back and reunite with that divine consciousness, total unity. It's a very brilliant concept. But when I understood that the concealment itself is part of the divine plan, then I realized the example they give is of a parent who hides from a child, hide and go seek, in order to elicit and generate the child's ingenuity to find the parent. But the parent is very brilliant. He or she knows how to hide well. And the child gives up. And that essentially takes the concealment into a new dimension. The concealment was only there to bring out the best in you. And you gave up. And you went off to live your own life thinking your reality is real. When concealment is only meant, it's like you're letting your child learn to walk. You can't hold their hand all the time. You have to let them be independent. You're there to hold them, but you have to let them walk on their own. So in God's mysterious ways, he wanted an independent consciousness to come to recognize God through their own volition, So the only way was a total concealment, which has the great risk of creating chaos and creating divisiveness and creating war and creating the delusion of material reality being an entity of its own. But in truth, it's always part of that bigger picture. So the concealment is also part of the revelation. Let's put it that way. And now here comes a pandemic and pierces the surface, punches holes into this false reality we thought was it, and tells us, okay, now tell me what you learned from this.
That is so, I couldn't agree more. I love that I asked the question. I love the answer. I love that my listeners are going to get that information, because really what it makes us all see is the pettiness that we live in, the pettiness that we have built our whole foundation of understanding existence on, which is our human experience. So we were put on this earth. We were born to find God. That's it. So we were playing hide and go seek. And the moment we were born, our parent was already hiding, and we have 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years to find him or find her or whatever that looks like for you, whatever your understanding of what that looks like. But what a beautiful message that's what our purpose is. Our purpose is ultimately to find that light, to connect with the truth that we were put here to experience. And there's no way we're going to experience life to its fullest if we already know the answer, if we already know where to find our parent.
I'll even add something more, Omar, to make it even more poetic, if you wish. They say there's an expression, to love another is to see the face of God.
Mm.
The concept of love, two people loving each other. I'll quote one biblical verse that people really don't appreciate enough. It says this, that God created the human being, male and female, as one androgynous creature, and then separated them. And that's why they seek out. That's why there's sexual and emotional and romantic attraction. Not because they want pleasure, because they want to reunite as one entity with the divine source from where they originated. So love is seeking the divine through the eyes of another. And that love is essentially manifesting God in your life. And what's the antithesis of love? Is divisiveness, hatred. I would even say, since we're talking about addiction, as we know, is dysfunctional attraction. You're attracted to the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
Attraction is great, but should be to the right. Be addicted to love. Be addicted to healthy relationships. Be passionate about it. But when you don't have attachments that are healthy, you're going to find an attachment that's not healthy. And the ultimate attachment, I would say any addict, even whatever addiction, is really searching to be attached to God, but they have not been able to find God. So they found it through some substance or some behavior or some habit.
This is so good. This is so good. We always talk about in recovery that we were trying to fill this unsatiable hole, and we call it the God-shaped hole, because we're seeking God, and we're trying to fill this hole with drugs and people and stuff and possessions and whatever. And there's no way to fill that hole with anything else but God. So truly, we are seekers. That's what, when we understand our cravings, our urges, our drive, we're chasing. I'm chasing this high. The first time I do cocaine, and the first time I do heroin, and the first time I drink a beer, and this overwhelming feeling comes over me. No different than when the first time I fall in love. It's an intoxicating feeling. And for a moment, I get this very fleeting glimpse of euphoria. And now I chase it and chase it and chase it and chase it, instead of recognizing that that is just a clue that something's missing. The love of this other person or this love for this drug it's really a clue that no, you are seeking, but this is not it. You're seeking God. You're seeking to find yourself. You're seeking to understand unity. You're seeking to connect with universal consciousness.
Right. Which is why the key thing in all these processes is not to destroy your passion, not to destroy your pleasure.
Yes.
It's to redirect it.
Yes.
Harness it. It's the object of pleasure that becomes the problem. The object can be the wrong one. But so many people think, you know what, for me to be straight or me to be clean, I need to like give up on my passions and my pleasures. No, you need to find pleasures and passions that are equally intoxicating, but they're all about healthy living instead of destructive living. That's really what it comes down to. So now you may have to abstain and refrain before you redirect, but nevertheless, at the end of the day, I think the sustainable way to live a healthy life is refrain from the wrong objects of desire, but finding healthy objects. I remember actually a group of young, I guess, what they called teens at risk, who had gone through a lot of difficulty, addictions and stuff like that. And they were now like in rehab, and they had a leader of the group who came up with a brilliant idea. They created a production studio, a production house called Redemption Films, I believe it was called. And they all became filmmakers. This one was a choreographer. This one was a videographer. This one, did administration. And he took their energy, and they were creating a film. Actually, it's a film about one of them who had a estrangement from his father and how he reunites with his father 20 years later. So you should see the excitement. I never saw such passion. All their passion was directed toward this project. So I really was touched by it. And I remember I went to see one of the first viewings. They showed a preview, and it was amazing. And I saw how someone could harness energy toward a productive end. And many of them will say clearly, I get the same high doing that than when I be in my privacy of my home shooting up or something. It was interesting. It was fascinating. It's a tremendous lesson in human spirit. So it's not about a lobotomy of destroying your spirit. It's about completely taking your spirit and redirecting it. So
I think that's really important. And the reason I want to redirect to something that I read here as well. And here's the thing I think that's more important. Not only do we need more love universally, but we need more unconditional love personally. And so when I'm going through addiction, and I have many of us, it's for many, many years. And through those years, we've done a lot of things that we're not proud of. It brings a tremendous amount of shame and guilt. And so at the beginning, there's a lot of pain and suffering when we first get clean and sober, because we feel like there's something wrong with us, that there's a moral failing. But I think the message is very clear here. You just lost your way. You're a seeker. You are looking. I love, one of my favorite books is Siddhartha, okay? And he talks about his journey. And really, it's this, the Buddha, really finding his way to God, an understanding that, from where he came from, he had to travel through what he went through to get ultimately to enlightenment. And we all can be enlightened. So there's this part in here where it says, okay, well, we talk about the addiction, okay? So his message and approach is not focusing on the lowliness of man, but man's great divine potential. So when someone is coming to you and they're like, Rabbi, I've cheated on my wife, and I've run through all the money, and I've hurt my family. I'm a terrible person. I can't stop doing drugs. I can't stop doing whatever. And they've reached this point where they're so disgusted with themselves, right? That it's so difficult for them to really stay sober, because every minute that goes by, they're thinking about all these things that they have done in the past, And here you talk about how, my focusing not on the loneliness, and that's what they're focusing on.
Right,
How do
right.
you counsel them?
That's good. Excellent question. So obviously, with always the big disclaimer that it's case by case, and
Of course.
it's hard to do in general terms and online. You always want to see each individual as another story. No one has the same. There's no textbook version here. But a few general principles, I would say. It goes with. I think it's a given. Anyone in recovery knows this. You can't be in denial if you cheat on your wife and the drugs and the money and everything you described. You need to be accountable and brutally honest, because lying and secrets is your drug, is your enemy.
Yes.
So we don't understand that. But that doesn't necessarily, then comes point number 2, which is that which you did or that which has happened to you is not necessarily your entire identity. What you are saying to yourself is that not only have I done all these crimes, and we understand them, they're real crimes, we're not minimizing it. But since when were you born a criminal? Were you born a cheater? Were you born a liar? Were you born a charlatan? No, you were born a little innocent child, came out of your mother's womb, pure. Whatever happened, whether your parents screwed you up because they were dysfunctional and they didn't know how to give love, or other things in your life that messed you up. So then what you're trying to do is separate. There's an expression, may the sins be erased, but not the sinner. What you want to do is be accountable for all your behavior, and you need to make amends, and need to be honest, and need to be accountable, in every possible way. But then comes down to, who are you? There's a part of you never got to know, just like we're talking about, get to know your soul. So the reason I'm qualifying, because it's important that, you can't just say, okay, I get to know my soul and forget about all my sins. I'm a great guy. No. You're a criminal. You did bad things. You hurt people. You're accountable. You got to make amends. There's no simple thing. But at the end of the day, you're making amends of what you did, not on who you are.
Ooh.
And what you want to do,
Ooh.
you want to reconnect to the pure, innocent child that you were once. You want to return there. And that will be the ultimate redemption. So yes, you need to correct. God forbid you hurt somebody. There's no way. You got to fix that. But then you got to fix yourself, meaning you also have to make amends with yourself. You betrayed yourself. You betrayed your true self. And you need to reconnect to that. I find that when people are able to hook into it, it's hard, because once you have that negative self-image, it's hard to break that.
Yes.
Once you can get through and you keep pushing and pushing and saying that, you do have a soul that's pure and light, and it doesn't minimize what you did, but it's still there. I remember, can I share something?
Yes.
I remember it was very moving to me. John Bradshaw. We've heard of John Bradshaw.
Yeah, of course.
In the first the 70s, healers, recovery. He was big into the inner child and stuff like that. I was once watching I think it was PBS, or maybe it was a video, I don't remember. But he was leading a workshop that so tremendously moved me. So he had a group of around 50, 60 people sitting in a room, men and women, and he's speaking very soothingly, slowly. But interestingly, when I started listening, in the background, there was this odd sound, like a thumping sound. And after a minute, I realized, you know what it was? It was an amplified sound of your heartbeat. Boom, 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 boom. It was the background sound. And if you ever listen to a heartbeat for a while, it's very, very soothing, because it has a rhythm. It's almost like a rush of water a little to it. And he begins speaking to the people. Very slowly, very deliberately, he says, this is the heartbeat of your mother. 9 months, you listened, this was the only background sound you ever heard. Because you were in her womb, listening to her heartbeat. That was the sound. And you're right near her heart. It's the only sound, that rushing sound. And you hear in the background. And then he begins to say this. He says, and your mother tells you during these months, she speaks to you all the time. She starts feeding you and giving you oxygen. She tells you, you're the most precious gift. I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait when you emerge from inside my womb. I've prepared a special room for you. I've bought new clothing, fresh white pajamas, warm blanket. I will always protect you. I will always nurture you. I will always help you be the person, the soul you are meant to be. And I thank God for giving me you as a gift. And he went on and on. I can tell you, after a few minutes, everybody was sobbing, including me.
I'm almost sobbing.
Yeah. And it was amazing. Wow. So first I saw it as almost like, okay, it's a little manipulative. But then I realized, no, this is real stuff. The guy is onto something. And the heartbeat, mind you, is in the background all the time. This heartbeat. After 5 minutes or whatever, I don't remember how long it was, he stops. The place is emotionally electrified, crying. I was crying. And then it was obvious. It was pretty obvious. He says, why are we all so touched? You know why? Because either you heard this from your mother or you didn't, and you realize that you deserve to hear it.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And he said, this is who you are. Now, I don't remember now, maybe some of this is my adaptation, but I realized, you know what? Exactly 9 months. It's not a small, short time. We don't remember it, but it's what etched and shaped our psyches as we were developing. How beautiful a newborn child is. You can imagine how impressionable a fetus is. And then the child is born, unfortunately, into a hostile world. Now, if the parents are nurturing and loving, great. But if they're not, and no parents are perfect, so now begin the toxins. Child begins to hear you're not so special. It begins to be criticized, invalidated, abused, violated, hurt one way or another. Everybody's got their story. And that pure child that was so connected, like completely submerged in embryonic fluids, like in water. Look how comfortable, how beautiful do we feel soothed underwater?
Always.
Yeah. And we have now wandered away, and now we've become someone else. And that child, who always remains who you really are, is submerged somewhere back in our unconscious. And going back to what you said, we're seeking to connect to God. That's that child. That's the God in that child. The purity, the innocence, seamlessness. No deceptiveness, no duplicity, none of that crap and all the garbage that humans, that machinations. How much energy do we invest in defensive mechanisms, in our armor, in protecting ourselves? We don't want to be hurt, vulnerable. I mean, how much negative thoughts do we have a day about ourselves, about others? That child had none of that. It was 9 months of heaven, paradise.
Bliss.
And that's what we're looking to regain. And that is the story. And I have to tell you, to be fully transparent, I did not go through the pains of addiction, but I was always very, very cognizant of these truths. I don't know why. I was always blessed. People always ask me, you seem to have really gone through a lot of difficulties, because I can identify with it and I empathize. I feel I came to it through love rather than through hate, if you know what I mean. Sometimes you come through life because I was never comfortable with the status quo. I was not a conformist. So I came through because I realized the structure of existence is not real. I always knew this was a shell from my youngest age. I never thought this reality was real. But that's grace. That's a blessing. It didn't come through hard, honestly. I have to just say it because I want to be honest. It didn't come through my life being destroyed. It came through gifts. I was given a gift. Now, I hope I rose to the occasion and I embraced the gift. But I'm awed when I meet people who've really gone through fire and hell, because there's a truth that they have that's so pure and refined that, but I think we're all in it together in some way. We all can help each other. And these are truths that, frankly, I think many of us, I'm sure many of your listeners could hear this even a year ago, but now the whole world can hear it. That's what's to me is quite unprecedented. I never expected that. I never expected that some executive who is so busy with his, machinations, exactly, the Matrix, busy with his next restaurant meeting or whatever it may be. And I'm not dismissing. People should always be happy and comfortable. So how do we get this truth out there?
What an honor to hear that story. Not only is it an honor, but I will be sharing that story That story I will be sharing. I'm going to re-listen to this episode. I'm going to own that story because it really belongs to all of us. That story, gosh, it brought me goosebumps. It brought me to tears. It was so soothing, so loving. And I realized that this message, today's message for our listeners, is that the work is trying to own that story, not trying to, seeking to own that story, seeking to own that experience, seeking to be able to tell yourself that story, to play that heartbeat behind you and remind yourself that you were inside that womb and you were this beautiful little baby inside, growing inside, safe, and the only thing you heard was that beautiful heartbeat. And what was waiting for you outside was this beautiful room and new clothes and love and nurturing. And you either heard it and you either got that or you should have.
And we create it in our lives today.
Oof.
We can. We are responsible. We can't just look back and say, I didn't get it. We are responsible to create such environments for our loved ones and frankly, for all of us, for each one of us. I will tell you, I wake up, I'm not a big sleeper, but I wake up excited every day because I feel that's my mission in life, is to help people understand this, to come to this awareness, to provide it in any possible way. And I, of course, get nurtured in return by nurturing. I really feel this is a mission, this would be a mission of our lives. There's nothing greater than that. Everything else is secondary, is a means.
I choose to believe that the coronavirus, for me, is for everyone to realize that story. That's what I believe, and that's my hope. I believe and I hope that the coronavirus will allow all of us to understand and live that story, to recognize that we were all born little, beautiful, perfect creatures that were born into a defective world, right? A chaotic world.
A toxic world, yeah.
A toxic world where ultimately our purpose was to find and understand where we came from. I love it. I love it. Wow. Rabbi, I had no idea what this interview was going to hold, but I am just completely honored that you have joined me and that you are sharing this beautiful message with our listeners. And I want to thank you so much for that.
It's my honor to be here with you, equally honor. And I really cherish the opportunity to commune as kindred spirits, as souls. There's nothing more dignified than connecting.
Yes.
I really, always time I meet yourself and all the listeners, there's like we're making connections. Exactly what you said. There's the connections, reconnecting something that on the surface seemed disconnected. So it's like nothing greater than that. It's may these connections have a ripple effect.
Yes. Yes.
Across the entire earth,
Yes. Yes. So as we close, and the theme, we've got two themes, but really the idea is, well, there's a few. There's unity, there's the coronavirus, and there's addiction, which is all part of our reality in this moment. So what parting words would you like to share with our listeners, just to close it all up?
Well, first I'd like to say that whoever you are, wherever you are, whether I know your name or don't, is that I have a profound love for you. I love you. And I don't say that just as a line. I think it's something that we have to embrace because we are really all parts of one larger story. And my narrative can't be complete without yours. Yours can't be complete without mine. At this special time, we have to be courageous, not just courageous to deal with the challenges, but be courageous to embrace your real voice. Not the voice of last month at work, commuting, or at play or whatever else we were busy with. Your real voice, the courage to be yourself, the courage to give. It takes courage. You have to dare yourself to be giving. You have more than you ever can imagine. And when you start giving, you start realizing the richness of giving, gratitude, appreciation. Some of the opportunities we have today, we are now, whether we like it or not, we are with our families at home, whoever it is that our home is like. And you could either see that as a, who needs all that? I'd rather go back to work. Or you could see it as an opportunity, a quarantine that allows you to connect and allows you to connect to people through technology. Thank God for that, all over. So my parting, I don't like to say parting, I'll say like a little break between one connection and the next, is that let us love each other like never before. Let us use this opportunity to show God, the human race, all of history for that matter. One day we will look back at 2020 and people will wonder, what did you do during that pandemic? Yes, it will be in the annals of history. People will, what happened? And we want to be able to say, each of us, I rose to the occasion. As much as fright as it was out there, and there was hysteria, and there was fear, and death, and illness, and we pray for all of them, I rose to the occasion. I became a more loving person, a more generous, giving person. I did everything possible to reach others. Be proactive, don't wait, and show that love. Love connects us with God, connects us with our purpose, and yes, connects us to that child, pure child that each one really is. We all together will play that beautiful music of this great composition of 8 billion people, whether it's Chinese, Italians, Spanish, Americans, Russians, Israelis, British, French, German. I mean, it's almost funny when you hear about these distinctions, because the microbe called coronavirus does not distinguish, does not discriminate. Human being is looking for a human cell. So maybe we should be looking for human cells with more passion and love than the microbe is looking for a host to be able to spread its infection. That would be a true redemption.
That would be. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you once again, Rabbi Jacobsen, for joining us. This has been such a beautiful journey and expression of love. I love you. Thank you.
And I love you. I just want to mention that being that I'm creating all kinds of resources, maybe I can.
Hold on. Let me do this correctly. It caught me. See,
is there a correct way?
There is. Okay. Rabbi Jacobsen, if our listeners want to reach out to you, if they want to benefit from all your content, what is the best way for them to find you and reach out to you?
It's very simple. I have a website called www.meaningfullife.com. Meaningful Life. What everybody's looking for now, meaningfullife.com. We see ourselves as a spiritual wellness center and a lot of resources. I'm literally been creating nonstop, especially a daily short 3-minute video called Your Daily Spiritual Antidote, an antivirus, psychological, emotional, spiritual antivirus to all the panic and fear and negative out there. Just go to meaningfullife.com. It's easy to subscribe. It's all free resources. It's my expression of love to each one of you.
I will have the link to his website on the show notes, folks. Just go to the website, go to his show notes, click on the link, or go to his website directly, right? And take advantage of all those amazing free resources. They're there for the team.
Thank you so much, Omar. Really, thank you so much.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. We've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
God, he said it perfect. Perfect. Have you been to Costa Rica?
Nope. But I'm always ready for new adventures.
It means pure life.
Oh, that's beautiful. Pure life. Pure life.
It is beautiful. And that is a wrap. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the SHAIR Podcast. And be sure to click subscribe to the SHAIR Podcast YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, on all the major social media platforms. Go to our website, the SHAIR Podcast. Go to my website, omarpinto.com. Find out about joining the SRC, the SHAIR Recovery Community, or one-on-one coaching with me by setting up a free consultation. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week on the following SHAIR Podcast episode.